Thank you, Gary. I'd like to thank Gary and his team for the invitation to speak today. It's very nice to have met some of you already. My name's Tom Keith-Welsh. I'm the Anti-Microbial Stewardship Lead at ICNet. And some of you may or may not have heard the news flash that it appears Colonel Gaddafi has been killed, but it hasn't been confirmed yet whether it's down to medication error or not. Just to give you a brief idea, I'm going to be talking for about 20 minutes. For those of you, actually, if I get a show of hands for those of you who aren't pharmacists who are here. Okay, good. Just so I know what level to put this at. I'm just going to talk. No, that's just fine. I'm just going to briefly explain a bit about antimicrobial stewardship for those of you who aren't aware of the issues that are around that, and then also talk a bit about our solution which might be able to help in this, called ABX Alert. Very brief background on ICNet for those of you who don't know who we are. We've been going for just over 10 years, and we've had a lot of experience and focus in infection control. And we have a mother product called ICNet, and we have over 1,000 hospitals worldwide using our software. But we're based here in the UK in Gloucestershire with a development team and sales support here, but also locations around the world. With a pharmacy background like myself, I love a definition, and I thought it would be worthwhile including a definition from an excellent document produced by a group of Australian antimicrobial pharmacists, which was published this year, which gives an excellent definition, I think, in talking about what antimicrobial stewardship is, and it's optimizing the use of antimicrobials. And this is not only to help save drug costs, but also to look at saving patient lives and helping to preserve the power in the antibiotics we have. Because I'm sure, as you've all read in the press, about the emergence of drug-resistant bacteria, the most recent one being gonorrhea. So what does antimicrobial stewardship do for hospitals? Well, programs like this have shown to improve appropriate antimicrobial use, reduce patient morbidity and mortality, and also reduce institutional resistance rates, which are of great concern to an awful lot of hospitals worldwide. But it also helps to reduce not only direct but indirect healthcare costs, and I'll come into what those sort of costs are in a moment. And this is, again, another definition which I've borrowed from our Australian authors. It's critical to the understanding of antimicrobial resistance and measuring the effects of the interventions that stewardship teams have to provide. So what is the problem? Now, those of you at the back might not be able to read the figures involved, but this is CDC data from last year. Antibiotic-resistant infections are responsible for $35 billion plus in societal costs, over $20 billion in excess healthcare costs, and over 8 million additional hospital days, which are directly attributable. So the numbers really do speak for themselves. Now, just to give you the one line about what ABX Alert is, you'll recognise some descriptive terms in here that have been talked about today about being real-time, collaborative, live, accurate surveillance of appropriate antibiotic use within acute hospital environments. And just to give you a very brief overview of the structure of the data that comes into ICNet, we have data interfaces from microbiology and also from a hospital information system, and they go into a server at the hospital. But the value of e-prescribing is added in here as well. And we've been discussing a lot today about the value of the information going into e-prescribing, but there's an awful lot of value in the information once it's there. And we aim to be able to enhance that with applications like ABX Alert. And how people access this information, either through a network workstation, so whether that's a computer on the ward, or if you're fortunate enough to have Wi-Fi throughout your facilities, then be able to use a wireless device as well. We have remote access, needless to say, to be able to do our updates, but it's all kept within the hospital network for data security, apart from anything else, and also the ownership of the information is held within the hospital. We also have the ability to export this information to other hospital systems, and I put national reporting here, but that also includes obviously trust reportable information. So what does this enable people to do within the antimicrobial pharmacy team? It enables people to care for the individual, because you're getting patient-specific information directly to the individual, but also being able to respond for the population as a whole. And what do I mean by that? So care for the individual as a critical patient-specific information to enable quick, accurate, and informed interventions to treat patients appropriately. And responding for the whole, as I mentioned earlier on, it's about preserving the power and the antibiotics you have. There is not an endless supply, and the pipeline for new products is limited, to say the least. So you're making sure that the next patient benefits as much as the one you're currently caring for. So I've already mentioned we have real-time interfaces with various hospital systems. It's 24/7 monitoring of your antibiotic policy in the hospital. We have a patient-specific record summarising all the relevant data. We cross-match clinical indicators, and there's a hospital-wide evidence base for your patterns, but also incidents and influencing your interventions and guidelines. And we have very powerful customizable reports. All of these things I'll show you very shortly. And it is a browser-based application. So in terms of rollout and installation in a hospital, it's a very straightforward one in terms of installing software. So let's have a quick look. And what you see here is the home page for an individual's account within ABX Alert. And you'll see there's at the top there is a number of alarms that are unreviewed within the system. On the right-hand side, we have the highest incident alarms. So we can see that's for my escape organisms, which have no current therapy. But also I have all the alarms in actual numbers that have been triggered over time. And you can see there's been a spike quite recently. So I can have a look at that in more detail. And also on the right-hand side, I've got some reports that I run regularly, so I have them already set up. But I'm just going to go and have a look at a particular patient's alarms. And you see we've set them into two areas. We've got standard alarms, and we've used rather colloquial terms here, and drug with no bug, but you get the message. And these are entirely customizable to your hospital. And the logic that goes behind this is set up at the start, and so individuals are able to add specific parameters around individual alarms that they want to see. So whether it's people who have a drug and no microbiology information, or whether they have a positive result and they have no therapy at the moment. And on the right-hand side, we have some other alarms that we're able to create, monitoring duration of medication and clinical indicators, so an elevated white blood cell count and raised temperature. But I want to have a look at my drug-resistant bug. And if I click on that, it shows me all the patients who have triggered that alarm. And I'll go straight to his patient record, and we can have a look at his information. So you see at the top, we have some basic information about him, when he was admitted, his date, sex, hospital ID. And I've also got all his demographic information. This is all taken from the hospital's own system. In the centre here, we have some observations, and this is a best-case scenario because we're aware that not every hospital records temperature of the patients electronically. But any pathology results are able to come through. So, for example, a white blood cell count. If we have multiple, we can plot those over time. We have their current location in the surgical wards, and also any known allergies as well. And obviously, this sort of information is designed to be seen by the antimicrobial pharmacy team. So allergies would be filtered out by the e-prescribing system ultimately, but we'd like to have a little bit of crossover just so that we can people have all the right information together. So we can see, let's have a look at the alarm again. So there was resistant therapy, and we can see there was another one a couple of days previously before that. So we'll have a look at the culture summary, which is all the microbiology results that this patient's had in a time period that I've set up. And, excuse me. And we can see there were 2 MRSAs, one in a wound and one in the blood. And I'm able to look at the results for those individual isolates in terms of resistance. And also, I've got the medications that the patient's currently on, which is taken from the e-prescribing system. So I can see they're currently on vancomycin and some ibuprofen, and they historically had erythromycin as well. But really, there's quite a lot of information there, and I'd like to be able to plot and see the sort of a story for the patient So if I into the trends section of the patient's record, across the top we have some blue dots, which are medication start points, and at the bottom we've got positive cultures. Now, if I want to I want to have a look at their white blood cell count and temperature, I can plot that over time. I can start to see that even despite having 2 different antibiotics, this patient has not responding, and that's down to the fact that they've had 2 sets of resistant therapy. So I know that they're on erythromycin, they have been on erythromycin, and they're on vancomycin currently. So if we have another look at their MRSA results, we can see in the older results that they were resistant to erythromycin, and in the latest one that's come through, they're resistant to vancomycin. So we need to make a decision on what's the best thing to prescribe this patient to deal with this infection, because they've gone for some time now without any effective treatment. And what we're able to do is to provide a cumulative antibiogram for MRSA in the hospital. And this is taking every single result from the hospital and looking at the sensitivities. And you can see it's also colour-coded. Now, the reason for that is that we have, for example, gentamicin and fusidic acid, both at 88%. But if we look at the gentamicin result, we can see not only that there have been 573 samples, of which just over 500 have been susceptible, but also the MIC value, which is the minimum inhibitory concentration, has significantly reduced, i.e. there is less drug needed to get a response in this organism. So that's why it's coloured green, because less drug is being required. Whereas in the fusidic acid, although it's 88% and has a similar sample size of 570 isolates, the amount required to treat it has grown exponentially in the past 12 months. So you very quickly have the ability to look at what's best for what's in your hospital right now and be able to make it a treatment decision based on that. Just in the interest of time, I'll move on, but we have the ability to be able to record outcomes within the alarm, so I can make a recommendation to intervene, and there'll be a pre-populated list of recommendations. So I want to change a therapy. For those of you who can't see at the back, it's a little bit small. And then that is time and date stamped. And we'll also have the ability to record an outcome, whether that was accepted or not. So we're starting to be able to collect an awful lot of information here about interventions made in the hospital and what the outcomes were. And we also have the ability to snooze an alarm, to review them in another 72 hours, or even dismiss it if no further action we believe is required. But I'm going to say that my recommendation was accepted because I'm an excellent pharmacist, and I'm very persuasive. But I've been persuasive because I got the evidence to show them directly why they need to change. And then that patient's alarm is dealt with. So that's looking at the care for the individual. If I head back to my homepage, I'll show you some of the reports we're able to run using this information. And if I look at all the organisms that are responsible for the majority of drug-resistant infections and look at the antibiogram for those organisms in my hospital, I can run that, and this is for all age groups. You can define it by age as well if you so wish. And you'll see there I've got the organisms across the top and the antibiotics down the left-hand side. And really I want to see how my susceptibilities in chloramphenicol has been over the past few months. And I can instantly bring up the susceptibility information for your hospital directly for chloramphenicol. And I can hover over the particular data points and bring up the actual number of tests and the percentage susceptibility, the actual counts, physical counts of the individual tests ordered, and also percentage susceptibility as well. And all of these can be exported into a JPEG or a PDF, because we know that there's a need to share a lot of information and providing evidence for people. One other one which will probably make some of the pharmacists a bit more interested is also drug consumption, looking at DDDs. This information is available at the moment, but the time required to calculate this information is quite significant. And in this particular case, I'm looking at some restricted antibiotics, so glycopeptides, carbapenems, and actually all the cephalosporins. And what I've done is calculate the DDDs per 1,000 patient to bed days. And that was as long as it took to be able to generate that information. If you want to change the way that this information is provided, then we can, there's a flexibility within the system to be able to do that. But you also have all the raw data underneath, which is exportable in Excel, so that information can be seen. There are quite a few other alarms and reports that I could show you. As I say, in the interest of time, I'll if anyone's interested, please come and have a chat with me. But really, just to summarise what the impact that brief look shows you is, A, it's reducing the time to intervene in inappropriate prescriptions in your hospital. As soon as an inappropriate prescription or a microbiology result comes in that shows that it's not effective, you can actually intervene as quickly as possible. It actively enforces your antimicrobial policy. These documents are vast and a lot of time is spent producing them. But to actually have an active monitoring system 24/7 is an extremely powerful action to have. It also can identify areas for improvement. If there are particular people or disciplines which are inappropriately prescribing, you can identify them quickly and easily and see if there's areas that need to be educated or policies changed. You can monitor antimicrobial use, you've seen from the DDD information, and also audit any processes that are happening within the hospital to see if a change in policy has actually resulted in a reduction in consumption or drug spend. And you can measure the outcomes of an antimicrobial stewardship program, which is absolutely vital to ensuring that we can continue to be able to use antibiotics at all, because a world without them is a scary place. And because it's web-based, we have the ability to centralise all the accessible information in one place. So overall, we can monitor and intervene in prescription decisions appropriately for your patients, reducing drug spend, and is an evidence base for your optimal antimicrobial dosing and monitoring, and improving pharmacy response time. And quality improvements are something you hear time and time again, and not just in the pharmacy. And the reports, some of which I've been able to show you. So overall, it's caring, as I said, for the individual, but also being able to respond for the population as a whole. And that's where I'll leave it.